Good day, friends. As you can probably see from the clutter, I'm either in the middle of reorganizing my home studio space, or I've taken up hoarding for fun and profit. Either way, everything is in total disarray, and I'm working on putting it all back together so I can bring you more sewing and fiber content. Seriously, I've seen parts of my old home office that were closed off for the past couple of years, and boy, was that an adventure. You never know how many stitch markers you've had to replace until you find a whole bunch under a set of drawers that haven't moved in a long damn time. It's like they were nesting or something, and, well, if they'd multiplied, I don't know if I'd feel disturbed or overjoyed because on the one hand, scary possibilities, but on the other, more stitch markers. You know what I mean? But the point of this video isn't to tell you about my clutter issues, it's to thank you for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. Because I hear that's a thing people do, and it sounds downright Canadian of the internet. Fact of the matter is, we blew past that 1,000 subscribers in a couple of hours, and I've been watching, boggled over the course of the past 2 weeks, as the subscriber count steadily doubled, and the view count zoomed over 12,000. Here I've been with my recording spaces all torn to shreds, unable to post a thank you, because I figured my corset video would have a couple hundred views before being forgotten. That definitely didn't happen the way I thought. Truth is, I'd been working on the corset video for about a month, if not longer, and was just finishing uploading things when Abby Cox posted the picture of her corset on Instagram. I'll admit that I was a little anxious that folks would think I'd somehow decided to copy her or that my video would be ignored, because that's the way my insecure squirrel brain works, and I completely forgot about the algorithm. Yes, all YouTubers talk about the algorithm, and we do so in ways that are uncomfortable to many religious folks because obvious reasons. The algorithm is a strange and wondrous beast that saw two costubers with sizable followings had uploaded similar content to this smaller costuber of size and went, "Hey, they like corsets, let's try a thing," and here we are. Totally unplanned. So thank you, Abby, for making your own version of Chrissy's corset. It looks fabulous, and I'm sorry I panicked. Thankfully, I didn't send any anxiety messages to your DMs because, whew, that would have been awkward. Thank you, Nicole, for the lovely ribbon corset you made, also driving traffic my way. Someday I'd like to attempt such a thing myself. It's shiny, and I really like shiny things. The corset, not the traffic. I've played in traffic before. It wasn't pleasant. Almost gave my dad a heart attack. Let's not do it again. I was probably 12 and a half and I fell off my bike. I kind of hope I helped drive some costume-curious knitters your way. Most of all, thank you to everyone who watched my red-threaded corset video. Extra special thanks to those who decided to stick around afterward to view my other attempts to make things, usually out of some sort of string-related material, and then to subscribe. The past couple of weeks have been wild, frankly, and I'm still getting used to the fact that anyone wants to see me babble on about crafting and sewing for any stretch of time. Both the husbeast and I have spent the past week marveling over the amount of time folks have spent watching my content, and the wonderful comments everyone has left. Those comments have been awesome, by the way, and I have a few other ideas I'd like to try in the future. Might not see the light of day for quite a while because people will probably get tired of hearing me talk about chests eventually, but there are a few projects rattling around my brain that will need pursuing. At some point I also plan on going through all of the comments again to find all the wonderful brassiere and corset recommendations that folks have left and put them on a page on my website for reference. Because if a particular company works for one person, it may work for more than one person, and if we can make our ladies happy, then it makes us just a little happier as well. And now for things not related to one's bosom. I've noticed some questions pop up in the comments over the past few months, and someone actually asked if I'd be willing to do a Q&A. Eventually, I'll let you guys loose asking questions a bit more organically, but for now I'm going to try and remember what's already been asked and do a little curation. You say g'day, have a bit of an accent, are you Australian? No, I've been living in Canada for the past 20 years, but a sizable amount of my family hails from the Ottawa Valley in Ontario, and I spent most of my formative years there. My accent, or more accurately twang, has softened over the years. If you'd like to hear what a full Valley accent sounds like, check out the first season of the CBC's Someone Knows Something. Content warning and reason, host David Ridgen investigates the 1972 disappearance of a young boy from our hometown. I literally grew up across the street from David, so when you hear him talk with his family and the family of the missing boy, that's pretty close to how I sound when you get my family in a room together. Why do you put your yarn/wool on that spinny thing that makes a very compact winded ball thing? I use a ball winder and a swift to wind my yarn. Yarn comes in different formats. A lot of mass commercial skeins are wound into balls, but they have a tendency to tangle. Hand-spun and independently dyed yarn generally comes in skeins, which are difficult to knit from unless you put it around your neck, and then it becomes a choking hazard of a different sort. So I use the ball winder and, when necessary, a swift to wind my yarn into easily portable cakes. I could wind by hand, but this takes a lot less time and doesn't require an assistant to hold the skein. How do you turn a heel? I think I may have answered this question in a previous video, but I'll probably be making another one soon, so stay tuned. The immediate answer is it's kind of like a brilliant form of origami, because you turn a flap that goes across your heel into a cup shape and then wrap it around the back of the foot. It's a lot harder to describe than it is to actually do. People will tell you that turning a heel is difficult. Those people are wrong. Remembering how to graft the toe when you haven't knit over 20 pairs of socks is considerably more difficult, and even that's fairly simple, so we'll go over that in a sock episode. How do you figure out how much crochet lace is needed for a project? Measure the length of the area you plan to cover with lace, then buy or make an extra couple of inches. When I made the lace for my chemise, I measured multiple times. I even added a few extra pattern repeats just in case. Then I started attaching the lace and realized I was short by about 2 or 3 inches. Because I hadn't cast off and secured my ends, I was able to eyeball how many extra pattern repeats I needed and just crocheted the extra. What kind of spinning wheel is that, and is it a family heirloom? My spinning wheel is a Schacht Reeves Saxony wheel bought for me by the husbeast as a present. She is about 10 years old now. Originally, I wanted a more compact castle wheel, specifically either a matchless or a ladybug. I'm very happy the husbeast was able to change my mind because I love this wheel. The wheel cost less than the list price on Schacht's site because someone had left their child unattended in the store and they made some marks on it. It's a cosmetic problem, and someday I'll probably just buff it out. I really need to give the wood a good cleaning anyhow. Someday I'd like to get a woolly winder for it because having to stop and change hooks is a pain in the butt. Have you mentioned spinning your own yarn in a video? I don't think I have, but I have plans to include spinning in future videos. What materials do you like to work with the most? For yarn, I really like merino blends, though they can wear through fairly quickly. I haven't made socks out of merino in quite a while for that very reason. It's really frustrating when you invest money in a premium product and time in the knitting a fancy sock, only for them to wear through in a few weeks. So I've been using stronger yarns for socks and saving the good stuff for other projects. For spinning, I just love playing with wool, period. I had a couple of Fiber of the Month memberships a few years ago and stockpiled some really lovely wool. There was a Polworth silk blend that was just a dream to spin. Then again, I've spun some bog standard wool and enjoyed the heck out of it, so I try not to put on any airs. Did you go to school for costuming, or how did you get into costuming? My parents both went to art college, so when my brother and I were little, they made us some pretty amazing costumes. I've been Wonder Woman and the Blue Fairy and Holly Hobbie. I remember helping my dad paint logos on a pair of work coveralls while my mum wired up a backpack with some vacuum hose and a small light display so my brother could be a Ghostbuster. And yes, I have my parents' tasks ordered correctly there. My mother has her certification in amateur radio and used to do schematics in her head to fall asleep at night. Thing is, as you get older, people want you to grow up, and part of that is to stop dressing up. I held out as long as I could. There's a picture in a yearbook somewhere of a very tall Care Bear. I don't remember if that was me or my brother, but it was probably me. Art college allows you some leeway, particularly if you're in film or video, but most of the dressing up I did at that point was lifestyle. I was as goth as you could get while still being overweight and poor as a church mouse. When I left school and entered the workforce, LARP was my excuse to costume. I was part of a Vampire the Masquerade live-action RPG for a few years, and it allowed me to dress up in costume when I wasn't having to pretend to be a young urban professional. What's your day job? I'm currently unemployed. I worked for a rather large multimedia company for almost 20 years and took a voluntary departure package when they did a massive downsizing and restructuring a couple of years ago. I was a hybrid fiber coaxial network analyst at my last position, HFC network analyst, which is a fancy way of saying that I was part of a team that monitored a rather large TV, internet, and phone network for outages and quality impacting problems. Like any long-term relationship, and I was with that company for almost 2 decades, it can take time to get your feet back under you and move on. I'm currently looking for work, but with all that's happened over the last year or so, it's taking longer than I'd hoped. Truth be told, I'm also a little scared to join a new company. So a lot of the stuff you see around me was bought when the husbeast and I were a 2-income family with an entertainment budget. I would really like to YouTube full-time, but as I only just reached monetization, I think that's probably going to take a while. I do have a Patreon account that a friend encouraged me to set up a couple of years ago when I was working on a book I'm trying to find the time to write, but I don't have any tiers set up yet. Basically, right now, I'm just trying to build a community, and I'm really thankful that this bump in views and subscribers has helped me get past the first hurdle. I don't want to sit here with my hand out when you're still getting to know me. Times are tough for everyone, and I don't want you to feel you have to support me when you need to take care of yourselves. Right now, I'm just working on making good content that you will enjoy with the hope that I can first get the channel to pay for itself if I need to purchase specific crafting or sewing supplies, or upgrade the equipment that captures and records the process. If I can eventually do this full time, I'll be ecstatic, but I'm no Abby Cox or Bernadette Banner. Why did you decide to do YouTube? Buckle up, this is a long one. In the mid-1990s, I attended the Ontario College of Art and Design in Toronto, now known as OCAD University. When I was there, I completed my foundation studies year and first year out of a 3-year specialization in integrated media before it became expensive and I realized it wasn't the right program for me. Integrated media is generally a fun way of saying kinda but not really new stuff we can't fit in any other program. I moved out west to be with my parents while I waited to see if I could transfer to a traditional animation school, and when that fell through, I took a course out here and earned a technical diploma in multimedia. So I have an introductory background in film and video already. Granted, it's more than 40 years out of date, because it was already 20 years out of date when I was in art college over 20 years ago, but the background is there. To be blunt, the first day of film class, my teacher told us that we'd be lucky to find a job working for the National Film Board in an administrative capacity, and that jobs in film and video would be hard to find. So learn how to make films, sure, but be prepared to make a living not making films, and if you think the weird enmity between knitters and crocheters is dramatic, you've never seen the way a film teacher and a video teacher talk about each other's departments. It's like at any moment you expect one of them to throw down with the performance art teacher as referee, mainly because the electronics for artist prof was busy getting high on the front steps with half his students. But I digress. So I made my projects for school and figured I'd be lucky if I could even get a job as a graphic artist, because by the time I finished with school, I was an artist and web designer in a city with its own art college and a lot of graduates and not a lot of artistic paying jobs. And this was before UX UI was a thing and you couldn't get a web design job because the client thought their nephew could just whip up a site for free on the weekend. Fast forward a bit, and because I have a weird affinity for technology, I'm working at the multimedia provider in tech support. support. I started knitting somewhere along the way, and after listening to Lyman Violet and the Knitmore girls, you knitters of a certain age know exactly who I'm talking about, I became intrigued by the thought of starting a podcast. The first attempt was called Sock Tart, and at some point I rebranded as Synchronicity. Then real life and computer issues brought that to a halt just as I was exploring the idea of a video podcast. Because I think YouTube was just starting to become a thing at that point. It was sometime around 2010, so I think my timeline's right. So if I'd had the tools to do so, I probably would have been on YouTube a lot sooner. Thing is, for the longest time, the only knitting videos I could find on YouTube were tutorials or podcasts. Podcasts usually follow a format of a single person or a couple of people talking about their week in knitting, what they worked on, and current events in the knitting world. There's the tendency to just hold your stuff up to the camera and spend time trying to get it to focus rather than shooting B-roll and making the knitting look, I don't know, aesthetic? So about a year ago, I thought I'd try streaming and very quickly realized that since I play World of Warcraft and The Sims on a Mac, streaming those games was probably not going to happen. Not until I can afford a PC. A lot of Twitch how-to advice also recommended making YouTube videos, and I very quickly realized that I am not a good fit for gaming YouTube. I'm far too quiet. So I had to think about what it is that I'm passionate about, and for the most part, I love making things. I thought about streaming crafts, but I wasn't sure I'd be able to get the right camera angles. Plus, if I was going to do knitting videos, I wanted to try something different than tutorials or holding my works in progress up to the camera. I'd been watching Bernadette Banner, Morgan Donner, and Rachel Maxey and thought the cinematic approach was really interesting. I thought it might be fun to try featuring knitting and other handcrafts in a similar way, particularly since I hadn't been seeing a lot of videos showcasing hand-worked lace or trim. Engineering Knits and Miss Philomena have been working on filling that gap, so I don't really feel alone in my millions of tiny stitches to make a chemise look pretty. When you think about it, my Victwardian project, because that's how I'm starting to think about it, is really just an excuse to read antique crafting manuals on archive.org. I'm still trying to figure out my style, so a lot of what I do may look derivative of other costubers like Bernadette Banner, Morgan Donner, and Rachel Maxey. We all start somewhere, and it's going to take time to figure all this stuff out. In the meantime, I'm looking for work, making things, and enjoying making short films to entertain both myself and you. I actually get to use what little college education I have for its intended purpose, and that's amazing.
A few moments later.
Alright, we're recording again. My camera is an older Sony and it cuts out after a half hour or so, so you have to get up and you have to turn it back on again. Whoops. Alright, on being an influencer. Nobody asked this, but I'm going to elaborate anyhow because I think transparency is important. YouTubers, on the whole, hate the word influencer. They would prefer to be seen as your friend and develop a weird, awkward, parasocial relationship with you, where they do stuff and you enjoy it, and you interact in the comments, and maybe you take inspiration from it and join in the sewing and the knitting activity, but you weren't influenced to do it at all. Nope. I find that's irresponsible. I'm also a YouTuber who went to art college specifically to study media, and while I didn't complete my 4-year course, it gave me a little insight into different parts of the industry. I think the folks doing our new media lectures were hoping that their students would become advertising innovators or maybe go on to take marketing on top of their diploma. Actually, the prof who gave this series of lectures was really into William Gibson and looked forward to seeing where the cyberpunk and Blade Runner-esque future would lead us. Whatever the case, they made us very well aware that the message of a video isn't necessarily about the content, but the medium of video itself. It's why vlogs seem relatable and cinematic videos seem commercial. You equate a vlog to a homegrown effort and a cinematic video to, well, sitting in a dark theater eating popcorn and getting the best bang for your special effects budget buck. Also, the content of the medium is often related to the way it's used. It's one of the reasons why a viewer who has no interest in making videos can be influenced to make a Regency costume because they watched 5 YouTubers do a loose Regency collaboration, the same way those YouTubers were influenced by a large-scale commercial production on TV, or at the movies, or on Netflix. It's a kind of unintended consequence that suddenly a whole bunch of YouTubers will make a schwack of videos about about Bridgerton or the latest incarnation of Emma. And whether you're sitting in the bleachers cheering for the person talking about the historical inaccuracy of Bridgerton, or you're coming to the realization that maybe Bridgerton's historical accuracy is meant to be questionable by design, or even just rolling your eyes and giving a thumbs up to the person who admits they haven't watched the show at all, you're influenced. And for a Netflix show, Bridgerton has thus drummed up a tidy bit of word-of-mouth advertising, all without paying a single red cent. Let me draw back the curtain. You may have heard the phrase, "the medium is the message." It was coined by a Canadian philosopher, yes, they exist, by the name of Marshall McLuhan, who specialized in media theory. And whether you like it or not, you've experienced it. It's also a great example of something called hegemony. The Oxford definition is leadership or dominance, especially by one country or social group over others. We're not talking about war or countries here, but social groups. So if the movers and shakers in a group, the Bernadettes, Morgans, and Noels, for instance, all put emphasis on the Belle Epoque, the 1890s for the rest of us slubs, many of the rest of us are going to follow in that direction. I'm not telling you this to scare you, and I'm not telling you this so you'll hate the YouTubers you enjoy. I'm not saying all this to tell you you're being manipulated. We're all being manipulated to one degree or another during the course of our day by advertising and yarn catalogs and the new pattern search on Ravelry and scrolling through Instagram. We, all of us, even content creators, are being advertised to for a startlingly large percentage of our day. Way to go, Mayor. Scaring the audience. When did Costuber become an expo or Night Docs expose? What it comes down to is this. You have to figure out how to make the right choices, and you have to decide whose opinion and ultimately whose influence you trust. There's a reason why Bernadette Banner is choosy about the sponsors she accepts and the brand names she drops over the course of the video. You've come to trust her opinion, and she doesn't want to lose that. It's precious. Because I can guarantee you that at some point, might be soon, might be later on down the line, I'm going to say something or do something or present a product to you that you're going to say, hey, wait, if she's unemployed, where did she get the wool for that project? Or, hey, wait, how are we unboxing something? It's possible it's something from my stash. It's possible it's a gift. I might have become employed and not told you. Maybe the channel's starting to pay for itself, or maybe I accepted an influencer deal from a sponsor and can't talk about it due to contractual nonsense. I'm going to promise right now that I'm going to do my very best to make good choices, because right now you're trying to figure out if I'm someone you can trust, and I don't want to lose that. Doesn't mean I'm not going to sell out to the man because, hello, unemployed, but I'll try to make sure I'm not shilling any inferior products or services, because really that's just tacky. Honestly, this feels like the same chat my dad had with me when I was 13, explaining to me why I was going to be helping mow the lawn because responsibility grows trust and all that happy stuff. If it makes you feel better, it's been a long damn time since I went to a party and missed curfew. My dad still tells me to call for a ride if I've been drinking, and the man's in his 70s. Are you going to feature your mum in a video? Only if that's something she wants to do. Both my parents have really interesting backgrounds when it comes to art, design, and craft, but their stories aren't really mine to tell. At the same time, I really value and respect my family's right to privacy. This is why you don't see candid B-roll of the husbeast. He thinks it's great that I'm having fun putting my hobbies on YouTube, and he loves reading all of your comments and seeing how the analytics change each week when I share that with him, but he doesn't really want to be in front of the camera, and I respect that. If that changes, it changes. In the meantime, I guess you're stuck with me and the cat because she just doesn't get a vote. What do costume or garb shops need to take into better consideration for plus-size customers? I haven't had to go shopping at costume-related stores, so this is going to refer mostly to street clothes. Not all plus-sized people are shaped the same way. I'm often a different size up top than I am below the waist, which makes dress shopping really interesting. What fits in the bust might not fit in the hips, and vice versa. I often find that plus-size stores like to sell skinny jeans rather than offer a straight leg option, and that bothers me. Not only because I feel that the concept of skinny jeans is to skimp on material, so you're paying more for less coverage and a product that wears out in the thighs quicker, so you have to buy another pair of jeans, but also because I don't like the fit. I do like having choices, and being able to buy a pair of non-skinny jeans in a store that specializes in clothing for larger people who already find regular clothing too tight would be really helpful. Also, prints. For some reason, dress shops really like to put plus-size ladies in really loud prints with bright colors, and it's just not my thing. I find that I'd rather have the option of not calling attention to myself. There are times when, for a creative person, I'd like a few classic lines rather than the latest trend. Though, honestly, the latest trend for plus-sized women is usually diametrically opposed to whatever the straight sizes are wearing. If the straight sizes have sleek and slimming black with a single pop of color, the plus sizes look like something from Aunt Mabel's 1970s Hawaiian vacation. Look, just forget the damn muumuu and give me a nice pencil skirt with a long jacket. I assure you, I have the right allocations and could probably use a machete to cut through red tape, if you know what I mean. If you're a slender person who's looking at the sleek lines and black wardrobe and wishing you could wear the really loud prints, I feel for you. As I said, choices are good. I'm just going to bring this up here because it seems the right place to do so. In a recent video, Rachel Maxey mentioned that she feels really iffy about buying larger clothing at thrift stores just for the extra fabric so it can be made into something for a smaller person. And I absolutely love that she said this. When I mention Aunt Mabel's 1970s vacation wardrobe, it's a long-standing frustration of mine that when I would go to Value Village or one of any number of other thrift stores, there would be plenty of normal size clothes and very few plus size clothes, except for very matronly and mature items, most of which were not very tasteful and in fact resembled something found in your elderly great aunt's suitcase after her Florida snowbird experience. It seemed to me that as plus stores became more plentiful, that any plus size clothing that did come into the thrift store would get snatched up really quickly. And I thought it was by other plus sized women, but I have seen smaller ladies beeline to those racks and come away with finds that I now assume to be used for thrift flips. It does make sense, but it also seems rather unfair when there are so many more straight size clothes available than plus sizes. So if anyone in the audience has Rachel's ear and can pass along the message, thank you. You rock. What other items do you wish you could buy off the rack instead of custom ordering? Hosiery. Long have I harbored a deep-seated envy of any woman who can wear wool tights, because I sure as hell haven't fit into a pair since I was 7 years old. Stockings and pantyhose are almost always a cause of drama as well, because they're hella expensive and harder to find. Seriously, you get a run in those things and you're out $20 and a small portion of your soul. They're also a lesson in frustration because most of the time they have these stupid plastic stay-up coatings at the top of the stocking, and folks, if I'm wearing stockings which are 10 times more comfortable than pantyhose any day, I need to clip them into place. Stay-ups do not stay up. They roll down, and it's embarrassing to get to your cousin-in-law's wedding and have to excuse yourself to the washroom because your stockings are alternately cutting off your circulation or doing the mambo around your knees. Seriously, if the whole deep dive into my Edwardian ancestors' wardrobe nets me the ability to wear fabulous long skirts with knee stockings, that sounds pretty nice after having to wrestle with the rare unicorn that is plus-size pantyhose over a size 18. Lingerie is another item. I like that plus-size stores are trying to accommodate with their underwear and nighties and bras, but half the time the underwear doesn't fit correctly, the nightie gapes over the chest or just doesn't fit, and you already know my opinion on bras. And if you're looking for something a little more daring, prepare for it to roll up, roll down, itch, or rip. So I guess my problem is mostly with base layers. What's the most unusual craft you do? I'd say either chainmail or faux pumpkin carving with a hot knife. I'm not sure I'll get around to demonstrating chainmail because it gets really involved and I haven't really had the time to work on that in years, but you'll probably see my mediocre talent with hot knife carving somewhere around October. How do you juggle multiple hobbies? I have to prioritize. I'm trying to figure out a shooting schedule that will allow me to work on my sewing projects, knitted items, and other crafted works, and be able to film them and edit them into cohesive stories, which is a hobby in and of itself. Also, it's great to explore antique patterns, but it's also nice to knit newer things as well. I have an idea for an ongoing series that will let me knit some popular classics of the modern knitting world, and there are times when I might just straight up toss the whole historical angle and do a gorgeously cinematic aesthetic trash feature on the latest pattern causing a fuss on Ravelry, because I like pretty things for myself, and there may be times when I want to make some pretty things for members of my family. There also may be times when I'm making pretty things specifically to give away to viewers or as part of a Patreon campaign, so having a little leeway to create is a good thing. I've cut back my filming schedule because the husbeast works during the week and would prefer that I wasn't holed up in my office all weekend madly editing for Sunday morning when he'd like to have a little family time. I'd like to get back to a weekly schedule, but I'm still trying to figure out the logistics of that one. It's possible I'll work in live Stitch and Bitch sessions to flesh things out. Folks seem to be open to the idea, so once I've fixed up my office, that's something we can look at. Folks wonder why costubers do things like rank the costumes in historical movie dramas or talk about the differences between Regency and Victorian sleeves. It's so we don't kill ourselves trying to make a project per week. Seriously, I've been trying to get around to making drawers and a corset cover for 3 months, but I need to get the corseted waistline measurement firmly pinned down before I can cut out the pattern. Because when it comes to fancy undies, size apparently matters. I think I'm going to get back to work on the office move. I have a bed to move up to the spare room and some cube shelves to bring down. If I haven't entirely bored you to tears, please do hit that thumbs up button so the algorithm knows what you like. If you left me a question and I missed it, I sincerely apologize, and maybe we'll do another Q&A session later. You know what? I'd like to know your answers to some of those questions. What's your favorite yarn? What's your most unusual craft? Let's talk in the comments, and I'll see you in another week or two. Till then.